name's Mike Davis, and I'm a historical gun maker and blacksmith. I've been building historical recreations of the American long rifle for over 30 years. I've been mighty fortunate in my career to have worked with some of the best artisans in the country. People have struggled for years to the American long rifle as an art form. Not only is it just a rifle or a gun, it's a combination of being a master of so many different elements. You have to be a carpenter, a master wood carver and woodworker. You have to be an engraver. You have to be a metal worker and blacksmith. And you have to be able to put it all together into one package that comes out as the ultimate in art, the American long rifle. I was very, very fortunate and honored to get a grant from Missouri Folk Arts Council to teach an apprentice and pass on some of the knowledge that I've accumulated and been fortunate to have been shared by some of the greats in the last 30 years. To find an apprentice that was ideal for the situation that we wanted to use, we didn't want a green gun maker I would have to teach the basics all the way up. It was put to me that I had to do a search and find an apprentice that was worthy of this grant that could already do all the basics and build a gun. And it was up to me then to take a successful gun maker and take them to the next level of artistry, building the American long rifle, and something that would have been produced here locally in Missouri. So after a diligent search, I found Mr. Travis Bauer. He's a very, very experienced reenactor and a very good craftsman. He's already could build the American long rifle and did a very good job at it. It was my job to take him to the next level, and I was very privileged to have an apprentice of this caliber. Travis, come on. This is Travis Bauer. It was my pleasure to have him for an apprentice, and he did one heck of a job with this project. And we pulled it off. And we took a rifle that would have been probably carried by Daniel Boone's son here in Missouri, Nathan Boone. And Daniel Boone was here in Missouri for a lot of his life. He left Kentucky, come to Missouri for a better place. And this is where he lived out the rest of his life with his son Nathan. And their whole family on Rebecca Boone's side were the Browns. The Browns were, even in the Revolutionary War, were extremely successful and masterful gun makers. What we're going to do is try to recreate the rifle that Nathan Boone would have had here in Missouri that would have been built by his family, the Browns. And what we have to do, we start out with a natural, just a plain wood blank. This is a square piece of wood that's just sawn into the rough shape of a gun so we could get two out of the board. Then we use, this is a ready-made barrel. As far as being rifled and shaped, it's already rifled. The rifle's cut into the barrel, but all the exterior work has to be forged and made to make this into a finished gun. It has to be plugged. The breech tang has to be shaped on the forge into the right shape. Then we have to cut in a channel into this stock blank. Was the very first step to receive this barrel. And this is one that has just been bandsawed rough to shape out of this square blank. Travis, put that in the gun stock for us if you would. Now show them how it fits in the channel. Tell them about it.
First, 42-inch long barrel. And what we do first is we draw our lines to make sure our lines are straight. And then once we get the lines on there, the biggest thing is all in planning. If your lines aren't straight drawn on there and everything isn't measured out exactly, your barrel channel is going to be out of whack. And when you do that, you're going to have big gaps on the side. And in the finished product, that shows, and that's not acceptable. So it has to be a tight fit. And that also comes down to the shooting part of it too. The better the fit, the better the shoot.
And tell them what type of barrel that is.
This is a swamp barrel. This is most modern rifle barrels are tapered. This is a swamp barrel. Basically, it starts off big, goes down, slowly tapers down to small, and then it tapers back out to big, which makes it a very challenging skill set to have to be able to inlet that into the gun stock.
And why did they make barrels like that?
For weight. It was lighter to shoot, it more balanced. With a long barrel, they tend to get front heavy. With a swamp barrel, it's not near as front heavy, and it balances out.
And over 80% of all the original barrels were actually swamp, weren't they?
Yes. The straight barrels was more of a modern.
That's it. That's it. What's that groove on the bottom side?
This here is your ramrod channel right here. This is what you would use to load your gun. It's missing some furniture on there yet. We have to put some ramrod ferrules in there, which help hold the ramrod in.
And they would have used a hand plane to cut this groove, just like Travis did. Mm-hmm. And I see you got a hole going in the stock.
That's what we would use. We would drill that, and that ramrod hole goes all the way back into here, which is also another very complicated task. We use probably a 5-foot long drill bit.
Uh-huh.
And with that longer drill bit, you take that risk of it drilling out. When it drills out, you're done.
It has to be done straight one time. You get one shot at it.
Yeah. You get one shot.
So it's preparation.
That's more of the
big thing there. What else does it take to make a complete rifle?
You need a lock, which is your...
This is the engine, what makes the motor run, so to speak.
This here is basically your ignition. We're recreating flintlocks with the American Long Rifle. Basically, you got a flint, your frizzen, and your pan. You put your powder in your pan, close it, you would pull it back, and you would pull your trigger, and it pulls the trigger, it sparks. Spark falls in, hits the powder, burns in through the touch hole, and inside of the cavity it hits the main charge, and out the barrel goes. Without this, you have nothing. And without a properly tuned and well-made lock, you have a very temperamental gun.
Okay, we start out with a square blank, in which a barrel channel has to be cut in and the barrel and the ramrod be put in. But the whole gun is still square. What has to be done first to get this into a three-dimensional, something that looks like a gun, Travis?
The next thing you have to do is you have to mount your butt plate.
How did you get that butt plate?
We hand forged this butt plate out of flat steel using a cold forge, an anvil, and a swage block. And it's in 2 pieces, and you have to make the 2 pieces together.
Give them a close look at it.
And it's all hand forged out of steel by my hand.
Now, where does it go?
The butt plate will go on here. You're going to want a offset onto that stock, so as far as the alignment with your eyes when you're shooting. And you would just inlet that into the stock right there with it slightly angled.
Okay, the whole thing that's different from an early gun like this, these guns were built one at a time by a custom maker. They were built for one person. They were built to fit that person. Whereas unlike a modern gun, we go get them off the shelf and it's one size fits all. This gun was made specifically to fit somebody. It all comes down to architecture. Architecture is everything in the early American long rifle. The dimensions and the ratio and proportions. They especially used the golden means of proportions, which was a 2/5, 3/5 deal. Anything should be laid out to be pleasing to the eye in 2/5 and 3/5 of the length, and that made one just a little bigger than the other, and that helped you get things where you were going with it. If we were going to put a screw in a surface, it comes down to 3/5 and 2/5. That's where you would put it in the total length. But you have the length of pull. If we were going to have a trigger in this gun, the length from the shoulder to your trigger finger has to be figured in. This is your butt plate. You can adjust this back and forth to where it actually fits the person by the length of trigger pull. The other thing that you have, especially on here, your head and your shoulder is not in line together. So you want to actually, we're going to put a bend in the gun and make the gun come out to go on your shoulder and put the barrel up behind your eye. This is called cast. And a right-hand person, you'd move it out and that would be cast off. That would make the stock move out away from you a little bit so it can sit on your shoulder and you can see down the sights. The other dimension and the final dimension that was set on a gun, on a custom gun, was the length of drop. What the drop is the distance from your eye to the center of your shoulder where the gun goes. Well, a tall person, needless to say, that from their eye to their shoulder is this high. If you get a shorter person, their shoulder and their eyes closer together. Well, nothing is more miserable or inaccurate than a gun that you have to reach up and look for the sights, or a gun that's got you scrunched up and you have to lay your head over to see. This takes away from inaccuracy. So these guns are built to fit you so you'll do the absolute best job. The ultimate goal that a gun maker tries to do, you want them to be able to throw a gun up with their eyes closed, and when they open their eye, the sights to be already lined up on the target. So we take all the dimensions from a person's body and we build the gun to fit them. And once we do that, when we've got the length of pull and all plotted out for them, we'll put the butt plate on and we'll cut out for the butt plate. And this butt plate will fit on there then. And that's when we start shaping everything down into looking a gun. Travis had to learn to use, we got some new tools. This was a wood rasp. This was one of the predominant tools that you use in shaping the gun. All the teeth were hand set on this rasp, and it's more aggressive than an average rasp. I mean, it will really make the wood come off. The other tools, show me chisels.
We start
Go ahead.
Go ahead. We start off with small, and we work our way up. These are just square, straight chisels. Nothing fancy.
And what'd you drive them with?
We drive them with a rawhide mallet. That way you do not tear up the end of your chisels with a regular hammer.
Each piece has to be painstakingly inlet into a stock. This lock would be completely disassembled, and would start by drawing around it with a pencil. And then Travis took his chisels and he marked it out, and then he took it down to one layer at a time. The lock is in different thicknesses for different parts, and he had to figure each one of those parts when he was doing it, and that makes a precision inlet job. What other tools did you use, Travis?
We've used our depth gauge, handmade depth gauge.
That's a handmade tool that he had to make specifically, like so many of these tools,
That was basically
to do the job.
for finding the depth of your channel. You would just stick it in there, run that down, and then there you go. You've got an exact measurement of your channel. Calipers, use that a lot. Like Mike had said earlier, you're a person of many hats whenever you're building a long rifle because of all the different skill sets that you need. And with each skill set comes a specific set of tools that you need, which you think you've got a lot of tools, you don't have near enough when you're starting. Another tool that we use a lot in the finish process is our engraver. And it's pretty simple, little fine tooth. And you want to use a very...
It engraves grooves and steel, and you can use it for decorative. You do your signature on the gun in it. You put the owner's name in it. You can inlay gold and silver with that tool.
It's made for decorations and adornment.
Okay. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to show you the butt plate on and Travis rough shaping the stock and how it goes. First thing we're going to do that denotes the shape of the gun or the architecture. There's three things that changes the entire shape of a gun and tells you what you got to have. And a lot of people think you can do just anything you want to in here, and you can't. The shape of the barrel, the width and the taper of this barrel that's through here, this denotes how wide that your gun is and what the shape of the forend is on this gun. We're going to bring it down to within about 1/8 of an inch of the shape of the barrel all the way down. So that lays out almost exactly what the front of the barrel that we're going to do does. The next thing that changes the shape of the gun is the shape of the lock. This goes on the other side, but the shape of your lock plate, a big lock or a smaller lock in there, that will be cut out here, and that gives you another bunch of shape changes that you have. This particular lock is an 1810 period type lock, especially in this part of the country. And the mountain folks really like English things. American and English is what they like the best. So this would have been an imported lock from England that came over on the boat, and then it would have been purchased by a gun maker here. And that's usually the way they did the barrels. They actually bought the barrels just like we did. So this would have been an English import to go on here. Would have been the finest one made. As a matter of fact, the English were on the ball with everything. So this goes here, and it'll denote the lock mortise. The last thing, and one of the key things that changes the shape of the gun, is the butt plate. This butt plate, Travis forged, store in the forge, it's got a taper in here. It starts out narrow, it goes to a wider point, and then comes down to the toe in the bottom. Well, when you think about it, when you put this on the wood is shaped to this and match this. So that's where we get the shape for the rear of the gun. And Travis just bandsawed the stock out to get us close and rough to make this go. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show him how to fit this butt plate to this. We use an age-old high-tech tool to do this. It's called a smoke pipe, okay? This is nothing more than a kerosene lantern. The old gun maker would have used a candle on his, or a fire, anything that would have made smut. What we do, Travis, show him how to smut that butt plate up.
I'm going to go ahead and hold it over the fire.
And get the black on there. We're going to print it on there, and it'll show us exactly where it's touching the wood and what the high spots are and what needs to be removed and what doesn't need to be removed. Now he's putting the butt plate on. He's going to tap it. And when he removes it, we'll see the print of where it needs to be done. Right now it's touching here, here, and there, and there. So he's going to take his rasp and work on that some till we can improve the fit.
Okay, now that we've got the bulk of the wood off with the bandsaw, now we're going to come in with our rasp. We're just going to work our wood down.
Travis is fixing to locate his lock on the gun stock blank. The vent hole, which will actually be the hole into the barrel for which the fire goes from the pan into the barrel and ignite the main charge, is the center of the gun. And there, what he's going to have to do is locate his pan centered just in front of the vent hole where he can get a vent liner in there. Show him how to do it, Travis.
Okay.
And then he'll draw a line around his lock plate, and then he'll go back with his chisels and then let his lock down into the gun until it comes flush with the barrel.
So what we're going to do, we're going to center that mark that Mike's made on the gun stock itself with the center of the pan. And we want just roughly the center of that barrel centered up with this flat spot here. So now we're gonna mark out our lot. Shouldn't move that much. Just like so.
Okay, he'll be using these flat chisels. He'll mark around the entire cut that we just scribed in. And then he'll have to painstakingly, and it takes a lot of hours, to go back and chisel that wood out for this to fit flush. The sign of craftsmanship in a gun is how tight the metal to wood fit is and how neat that it's all put together. You don't want a bunch of gaps of wood around your metal. You want it to be married and look like it was born together. And he'll do this painstakingly with that. He'll do the triggers that go in it. All the hardware and the patch box are all done with hand chisels. You have to, it's a dexterity skill that you have to learn. Is how accurate to use your chisels. You have to judge the wood on how the wood behaves differently by following the grain or running away from you. Sometimes the grain will want to grab your chisel and you cut deeper or not. So it's a big learning curve in using tools like that. And what we end up with is the finished product. Show them the grant gun. Get it down. Bring it. This is the rifle that Travis built for the grant. He started from scratch. We've been trying to show you just some of the steps that we did. We didn't have time to make a video while we were actually doing it because we've got about 150 hours of building that gun already. But he inlet the patch box, the lock, he hammer forged the trigger guard, the butt plate, the silver inlays, and he learned to engrave those. The wood was actually dyed with aquafortis nitric acid stain with steel dissolved in it, just like the originals were. There's no difference in this gun than the original was. Our point, we want you to be able to be zapped back in a timeline transport with this gun and end up looking like you belong there, that you weren't out of place. We want nobody to notice you not have been there where you're supposed to be. So this gun is exactly as the original would have been. Travis has got way over 150 hours in this project and logged many, many different miles driving back and forth to my home shop. We're here in his shop today that he's getting set up, and he's doing really well. He's taking this thing and ran with it beyond my wildest expectation, and I'm very, very pleased. The project that he did, I don't think I could have found a better apprentice to do this job with. And he's taking it and he's running with it. And thank goodness for the Missouri Folk Arts grant that helps carry on the tradition of doing this. It was on account of them that were able to do this, and I was able to hand down this knowledge. And now it's on to him to pass it on to somebody else. And they're just like it was handed down to me. Travis, you did good, sir.
Thank you, sir.
And I do appreciate you doing this. And we thank the Missouri Folk Arts Council and the University of Missouri for making it possible for us to do this. And we hope that they carry on and keep carrying on so that this doesn't get lost as an art form. So the ball's in your court. It's up to you. Run with it.
Thank you, sir.
It's been a pleasure. I'm Mike Davis.
I'm Travis Bauer.
And we're really happy we got to share just a tiny bit of what we've done together with you. Anybody that's interested, by all means, contact either one of us. And we'll show you more of what we did. And there we'll discuss it with you. Or anything that we need to do, if we can help the Missouri Folk Arts Council, we're in your debt. And we thank you. Good day.